Hey kiddies, it's terrible triple feature time once again. And this week we're going all the way back to that halcyon era of the 1980s. Now you remember the 80s, swatches, high tops, neon, everything. I know, it's just wonderful. But if you were a suburban white guy like me, there was really only, one thing outside of Transformers and or Ninja Turtles or G.I. Joe that you really wanted to do with your time. That's exactly right. Access thermonuclear weapons. And that is the theme of this week's triple feature. Suburban white guys in the 80s and their nuclear bombs. Our menu includes the Manhattan Project, WarGames, and Weird Science. Now, the order of the films is we're going in increasing pop culture love and nostalgia, while conversely going in reverse order for credulity as to whether or not this is actually possible. So, Manhattan Project's oddly enough, not a well-known film even now, even though it had a lot of great people in it. It's got John Lithgow as a nuclear physicist. It's got John Mahoney as a scary military guy. It has a very young Cynthia Nixon, well before Sex and the City and or Red Hair days. And it's got some dude playing our main character, Paul. Now, Paul is... If you look up the phrase, too smart for his own good, Paul would be there grinning with his goofy utility vest and nail clippers. Paul has noticed that John Lithgow, the guy who's macking on his single mother, probably works for a nuclear testing facility. And so, using plucky know-how and MacGyver-esque antics, steals not just plutonium, but apparently super plutonium. I forget what the actual term of the stuff is. But it is super duper worst fissile material on the planet. And so, being, again, plucky and too smart for his own good, Paul decides to show everybody by making a nuclear bomb for his science project. And oddly enough, people react poorly when they find out that a sizable amount of fissile material is missing and or has been turned into a nuclear weapon by a 16-year-old. What's kind of fun is because it's the 80s, it predates all of the heightened security levels that we live in now. But you can still see sort of the same type of tactics that would be used when the word is out on Paul and his nuclear bomb and they're trying to track him down. They're planting negative stories about him, turning him into, a public enemy number one, mainly because we got to track down this bomb. It's got like 80s montages. It's a solid movie. It's really fun. I mean, John Lithgow in the 80s, he could play the shark in Jaws. John Mahoney before Frasier days. It's a good time, and I always liked it watching it as a kid. I wanted to be Paul. Everybody wants to be a genius at 16. Maybe not so much with the nuclear aspirations. I went the Transformer route, in case you didn't notice. Next up, we've got WarGames. People remember WarGames. This had Matthew Broderick as a young computer hacker who was trying to impress Ali Sheedy with his computer hacking abilities. So, just randomly dialing up telephone numbers and messing around with people. Of course, ends up dialing NORAD and accidentally telling the artificial intelligence, let's start playing thermonuclear war games. Except the AI doesn't know that it's just a game, and Joshua is the name of the AI. It starts actually, setting things up for real. Nuclear annihilation of the entire planet. This one, WarGames relies a lot on the general populace not really having any idea what a computer does or what it's capable of doing. Much like Tron in the 80s relied on the same thing, whereas Tron Legacy required you to not understand or just to ignore how anything works. WarGames, it's just a good time. I mean, just from the opening, which, if you notice, the opening scene with the two missile launch guys that have problems are actually John Spencer from The West Wing and Michael Madsen from Reservoir Dogs, which is just bizarre. But then you have just the Whopper, the artificial intelligence computer that's also named Joshua. Forget. I think the Whopper is the actual apparatus, and somehow Joshua was still installed on it. Joshua being a leftover from older English computer programmer named Professor Vulcan. And it really does kind of get exciting towards the end as we're trying to figure out how to disconnect or stop this computer before it sets off a series of events that's going to destroy the entire world. Also, much like Manhattan Projects, features somewhat of a genius, Matthew Broderick, as I believe his name's David, pulls some MacGyver-esque antics to get out of NORAD because, you know, you can just do that. They're only highly trained professionals. Why would they not be able to be duped? But it's really exciting towards the end, and we have like the ultra, you know, not pacifism, but peace message of there is no way to win this game except not to play. And that in and of itself is very 80s because the Cold War was not automatically drawing to a close, but I think people were getting tired of it. And so there was a lot more push for, let's, you know, as much as we don't like communism, maybe there's another plan other than blowing every single person on the planet up. Finally, we have probably the most famous film in the list, and also the least realistic, John Hughes' Weird Science, which there's actually very little science in this movie. It's just magic. Gary and Wyatt, Anthony Michael Hall, and some dude. They just hook their computer up to a lightning rod. Not a lightning rod, but little electrical cables. And miraculously, they make Lisa, the breathtakingly stunning 80s Kelly LeBrock, much before. You want to talk about the worst thing Steven Seagal can do to a person? Look at Kelly LeBrock after they got divorced. Just terrible. But somehow Gary and Wyatt create Lisa. They're, as John Hughes described it, Mary Poppins with boobs. She is just a genie, just a magic genie that does whatever they want. And when they get pressured by local Shermer, Illinois toughs, Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Russler, they try to make another one for them, for Robert and Robert. And they accidentally, instead of hooking the whole apparatus up to the Barbie doll that they used in the first place, it's actually hooked up to Time magazine, the cover of which features a nuclear intercontinental ballistic missile, which suddenly appears in the middle of Wyatt's house, which causes him great stress. I mean, I would have thought everything, like the kitchen being blue, their grandparents being catatonic, Chet being turned into whatever the fuck Chet was turned into. All of this, you know, actually, I don't know where I'm going with that sentence. A nuclear bomb would really scare the shit out of me. But Weird Science, it's great, and love the theme song. Any excuse for Danny Elfman and or Oingo Boingo is always a good time. So, suburban white kids in the 80s, and the nuclear bombs that love them. Manhattan Project, WarGames, Weird Science. Go watch it, and I will see you guys next week.